Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome back to the GBC SPT page. My name is Deva Madhavadas, and I'm very happy to be with His Grace Madhavananda Prabhu. Prabhu, welcome. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, my internet just skipped for a moment, I think.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
The blips. Madhavananda Prabhu, hopefully most of you are familiar with him right now. He gives beautiful katha, and he's based out of Jagannath Puri. We were just discussing with him an exciting adventure that he has in mind for developing the educational experience there. And that's something that I've always appreciated about Prabhu is his well-rounded perspective of Krishna conscious culture, that there's so many elements of our community that we have to showcase, not only for the outside world, but also inside for our own devotees that we don't always do such a great job of highlighting. And he's really dedicated himself to bringing out some of those more nuanced elements that are just so attractive and exciting when we can connect to them. So it's always wonderful to hear him talk about the previous acharyas, which he'll be doing today, because he has such a relish for those paragons of culture, because he himself is dedicated to developing it. So thank you, Prabhu, for being with us today. And I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you. There's one time I heard someone, sociologist or psychologist, say that when people like something that someone else says, it's because it's close to their heart, because they have the same idea. Mm-hmm. And I know you share so many different ideas, but the two of us have a similar mood in so many ways. And I'm really just super appreciative of what you're doing in Ypsilanti with the devotees there. Thank you very much. So let's get into it tonight. Tonight we're going to have a katha about Raghunandan Thakura, who's a very dear devotee. Actually, we wrote a series of articles some years ago, about, 20 years ago, in our Krishna Katamrita Bindu magazine. And it was about Raghunandan Thakura. We called him Mura Pranatumi, which is a phrase spoken by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from the Chaitanya Mangal. Mura means mine, prana means my life, Tumi means you. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said this to Raghunandan Goswami, that you are my life. So that's pretty good, isn't it? We'd like to hear about someone tonight who Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, this person is my life. So just looking at something here real quick. Before we start, I want to go ahead and do some Mangalacharana prayers. So just stay with me for a minute. Goragraganya gana gotra goloruharam Goranga gudatama gopyara kopa briksham Gopala gada ratidam yati singha gora Govinda deshikavaram satatam namami Uttama adama kichuna bachila jachiya dile kakola Kahe premananda emona goranga hridoya dariya bola Bhaja goranga kaha goranga laha gorangira namare Jejana goranga bhaje se hoyamara pranare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yashaiva Padambuja Bhakti Labhya Prema Bidana Parama Pumata Tasmai Jagan Mangala Mangalaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste. So tonight we want to say something about a great Vaishnava in our line. And like a lot of people that all of us know, he doesn't exactly fit inside the box that we may be used to. And in fact, sometimes that's what we like about people, isn't it? That they don't exactly fit inside of our normal box. So this is the life of Raghunandan Goswami. He appeared in the Nityananda Vamsa, which we don't always accept, the supposed family of Nityananda Prabhu, in the village of Maru near Bardhaman in the late 1600s. And he was a great writer. He lived in his village in Sri Khanda. He had many, many followers. Here in our library in Gora, the Gaudiya Research Association, we have copies of 3 of his books, Gauranga Viradavali, Gauranga Champu, and Radha Madhavoda. The Gauranga Viradavali, it has so many different songs glorifying Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We've printed excerpts from those songs, or songs, if you're interested in Bindu's issue 271, 297, and 356. You can look it up or ask me later on. But the Gauranga Viradavali shows various literary ornaments. He includes songs where the poet, Raghunandan Goswami, uses all the letters of the Sanskrit alphabet in proper order. It goes a, e, e, u. It starts with the vowels and then goes into the consonants. And then Radha Madhavoda, that has 34 different sections called ulasa, or exaltations. And it begins with the description of the mood of Srimati Radharani, and then her rag, or attraction to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it focuses on the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, which especially have to do with Radharani's man, or her sulkiness, and the mana bhanjana, Krishna's breaking that sulkiness. These are all elements that are foundational to Gaura Leela. So indirectly, his book, Radha Madhavada, has to do with Gaura Leela. Then he wrote another book called Ram Rasayana. It's a metrical version of the Ramayana, which embodies Gaudiya Vaishnava teachings on the subject of bhakti. Then he wrote another book called Sangsayastani Tika. It's a commentary on the Bhagavatam. And then here's his Chando Manjari. It's a book that he wrote about Sanskrit kavya and meters in Sanskrit kavya. And then perhaps his greatest work is his Gauranga Champu. That's a Champu literature which consists of the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. A Champu is a genre of literary composition in Indian literature. The word Champu means it indicates a kind of combination of poetry and prose. And it has a mixture of Gadya Kavya, or prose, and Pada Kavya, or poetry pastimes, passages with different verses interspersed amongst the prose sections. So there's a lot of examples of that. Probably the most famous is our Jiva Goswami's Gopal Champu amongst us. But there's literature in Sanskrit, like that very old literature, like the Itareya Brahmanas, written by Harish Chandra Kapatyaya. In the 2nd century BC, there's an author named Rudramana Girins who wrote some inscriptions on rocks, and we see the Champu Kavya there. You can also find it in the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and different Puranas and different Mahakavyas. And later on, it was a real development they made in the style of writing. In Odia literature, there's different great writers like Dina Krishna Das, Banamali Das, Baladev Rath. They wrote some different champus and very amazing literatures. Raghunandan Goswami, in his Gauranga Viradavali, we printed one song that he wrote, which we titled All Alphabets in the Service of Gaura. And in this composition, he gives different names for Gauranga Mahaprabhu, going through consecutively the entire Sanskrit alphabet in order. And he's just a complete genius. So we could speak something about some of his different writings and things, but we'd like to say something about his life. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we hear something about Kandabasi Mukunda Das. He was a doctor of the Muslim king Nawab Hussain Shah. And according to Haridas Das in his Gaudiya Vaishnava Abhidan, after the Nawab saw the exalted spiritual position of Mukunda Das, then the king released him from his service. And Mukunda then went to Navadvip, where he met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We don't know the date of Mukunda's appearance, but the Gaudiya Vaishnava Abhidan gives his disappearance day as a Rasa Purnima, the full moon day of the month of Kartik. The Chaitanya Charitamrita describes that Mukunda Das and his son Raghunandan Thakura were the 39th branch of the tree of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport to that verse, which is Adi Leela chapter 10, text 78. Prabhupada writes there, Sri Mukunda Das was the son of Narayan Das and the eldest brother of Narahari Sakar. His second brother's name was Madhav Das, and his son was named Raghunandan Das. Descendants of Raghunandan Das still live 4 miles west of Katwa in the village named Srikanda, where Raghunandan Das used to live. Raghunandan had one son named Kanai, and Kanai in turn had 2 sons, Madan Roy, who was a disciple of Narahari Thakur, and Vamsidasa. So Prabhupada writes, it's estimated that at least 400 men descended in this dynasty. All their names are recorded in the village of Srikanda. In the Gauraganadas Deepika 175, it is stated the Gopi, whose name was Brinda Devi, became Mukunda Das, lived in Srikanda village, and was very dear to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabhupada says his wonderful devotion and love for Krishna are described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 15. So Mukunda Das is a great devotee, and his son or nephew, Raghunandan Das, is also a very dear devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In text 113 and 114 of the Madhya Lila, chapter 15 of Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu once asked Mukunda Das, kind of in fun, that you're the father and Raghunandan's the son. Now, a nephew in Vedic culture is considered to be like your son. Are you the father and Raghunandan's your son, or is Raghunandan your father and you're his son? So you tell me, who's the father and who's the son? Huh? So Mukunda Das was Brinda Devi and Krishna Lila. And Mukunda Das is such a great devotee. Raghunandan Das is a great devotee. Mukunda Das is a mani namanada. He doesn't demand respect. He gives respect to everyone else. So when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked him that question, Raghunandan Das described very emphatically, Mukunda kahe Raghunandan mora pita hoy, amita putra e amara nishchoy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Mukunda kahi, Mukunda said, Raghunandana mora pita hoy. Raghunandan, definitely, he's my father. Ami Tara Putra, and I am his son. A Amara Nishchay. Definitely, don't have any doubt. That's the situation. Amasabara Krishna Bhakti Raghunandan Hoite. Ataiva Pitta Raghunandan Amanishide. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. And he said that Amar Sabara, that myself, all of us, Sabara, Krishna Bhakti Raghunandan Ahoita, we've all gotten Krishna Bhakti because of Raghunandan. Ataeva Pitta, therefore, he's our father, Raghunandana Amar Anishchite. He's such a great devotee. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard this, he became very, very happy. And he said, Jana hoite Krishna Bhakti se Guru hoy. That whoever gives us Krishna Bhakti, that person is Guru. So definitely, indeed, in that sense, Raghunandan is the father and you're the son. And he accepted like that. So there's many, many different stories about Mukunda and about Raghunandan. We hear in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 15, there's a story that Raghunandan, that Mukunda Das once, he was sitting on a chair before the Badasaha, the Muslim ruler, and Mukunda was a doctor. He was giving some prescriptions to the Nawab, and they were talking about diseases and things. And at that time, one of the Nawab's servants came and started fanning him with a fan made out of peacock feathers. And when Mukunda saw the peacock feathers, he immediately thought of Krishna, and he became ecstatic. And he fainted and fell down. And the Badasahu, the Nawab, saw, oh my God, what happened? Is he okay? Did he die? And he sprinkled some water on his face and said, what happened to you? And then Mukunda was speaking in a very shy way. And he said, no, it's okay. I'm not hurt. Why did you fall down? He said, I have this mrigi vyadi. I have this disease. There's too much air. Sometimes my head spins. I fall down. It's nothing more than that. But that's not true. That's not his reason. He's telling him that it's this mrigi vyadi, which you could call epilepsy. But that's not the reason. The reason is he has Krishna prema. But he doesn't want to reveal that. So for the Vaishnavas, we don't want to advertise what we have. And this is the kind of family that Raghunandan grew up in. A family of great, great exalted devotees, but devotees who didn't advertise their bhakti. It's a little hard for us sometimes because Westerners in general are new to bhakti. And a lot of times as devotees, we think that preaching means to advertise your bhajan or advertise whatever happiness you have in Krishna consciousness. But that's not what Bhaktivinoda Thakura teaches. That's not what the Acharyas teaches. Rather, they say you should hide your bhajan. Bhaktivinoda Thakura in Kalyana Kalpataru, he sings a wonderful song that my Guru Maharaj is very fond of. Amito Vaishnava, e buddhi hoile, amani na hobo ami. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Pratishtasha asi, hridaya dushibe, hoibo niraya gami. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Hare. He says, Amito Vaishnava, e buddhi hoili. If I start thinking I'm a Vaishnav, then I get this mentality, this buddhi, then amani na hobo ami. Then I won't want to get respect from everybody else. So I start thinking, giving respect, that's what the bhaktas do. That's what the new bhaktas do. And senior devotees like myself, we accept respect because I'm a Vaishnava. But Bhaktivinoda says, Amito Vaishnava e buddhi hoili, amani na hobo ami. That if we start thinking like that, then we desire to have this respect from everyone. Then we can't give respect to everyone else. And then this pratishta asa, pratishta and asa, this desire, asa for pratishta, or some position comes. And hridaya dushibe, it spoils everything. As we were hearing earlier today, Radha Govinda Maharaj said in one lecture that why is it that in Ram Leela, that the goddess Sarasvati, she picked out Manthara to confuse her so that she could do some pastime so that Ramachandra would be banished to the forest. So they had to find someone who could be convinced, and the only person they could find was Manthara. And Radha Govinda Maharaj gives a beautiful example. He says that when you see a garbage can, what do you throw in it? You throw trash in it. That's just a natural thing. So if our consciousness is like a garbage can, then that's what we attract. So this is what Hridaya Dushibe means. That when I desire this pratishta asa, this pratisha, this position, then Hridaya Dushibe, my heart becomes polluted, and then hoibo nirayagami. Then I have some desire to have some position in that. So we should understand that Raghunandan Thakura, although he was the son or nephew of Mukunda, Mukunda recognized him as being older than him and considered that he was like the father because Raghunandan gave them bhakti. A very beautiful thing. Raghunandan grew up in this family where Mukunda is such a great personality. He's a big man in the community. He's a doctor to the Nawab, to the leader there, the ruler of the area. And he was an ecstatic premi bhakta. But when he exhibited those symptoms and the Nawab said, wow, what's with you? He said, oh, I have this epilepsy. That's all. Because Amito Vaishnava e buddhi hoili amani na hobo ami. If I have this attitude that I'm a Vaishnava, then I can't become amani na manadena. I can't give all respect to others. So who really is a senior person? And this is a beautiful topic that we learned from the life of Raghunandan Thakura. There's so many things we could say about Raghunandan Thakura. I think we could probably give a seminar about him for a week. I don't want to just give a whole bunch of information, but we want to try to unfluff it. We want to fluff it out. I'd like to, in support of this point, we'd like to go to Hari Bhakti Sutta Doya. in the 18th chapter, Hari Bhakti Suradoya is considered to be a section of the Brihanaradiya Purana. It's often quoted by our acharyas. And there's a story there in chapter 18 that once on the banks of the Ganga, there was an assembly of great sages that took place, which was headed by the Honorable Vasishta Muni. And there were many other great sages and rishis there. The Sapta rishis were there. And they were speaking on so many different topics, who's dear to Vishnu and Krishna. And there was some controversy also. It's not just in the Hare Krishna movement on Facebook that we have controversy, but there's controversy also. It's always there amongst great thinkers because people think in little different ways. And those thinking, their conception, it becomes very dear to them. And they can't tolerate sometimes someone has a little different conception. And we see that present today, as I said on Facebook. So at that time, the great Rishi, Markandeya Rishi, he was 7 kalpas old. That comes to 27,251,000 years of age. He arrived there. Now he's like pretty senior. He's 27 and almost and a half million years old. And all the rishis, when they saw him, they all stood up and they gave him a special seat and gave respect to him. And then at that time, Markandeya Rishi, he noticed that in that assembly was Parashara Muni, who's the son of Vasishta Muni. At that time, Parashara was 7 years old, and he was sitting on the lap of his father. So Markandeya Rishi was over 27 million years old, and this little boy was 7 years old. And this is going on in an assembly of big rishis. So although he was just a little boy, Parashara Muni had so much devotion for the Lord. He never forgot the Lord, even for a moment. So as soon as Markandeya Rishi saw Parashara, without any hesitation, with great reverence, he immediately fell down on the ground and offered obeisances to that little boy. And all the rishis who were there were a little surprised. It's an interesting thing. When you're in an assembly of great personalities, there's a certain etiquette to be followed. And if you give more respect to a junior person, a person who's junior in that assembly, to other senior persons, everyone becomes disturbed. So how is this? You're giving more respect to this little boy. You're over 27 million years old, and there's so many exalted rishis and personalities here, and you're giving more respect to him. And Parashara Muni wasn't very happy about it either. He was really embarrassed and said, no, don't, what are you doing? And Markandeya Rishi picked him up and said, no, actually, you're older than all of us, and therefore we worship you. And Parashara Muni said, how is that? He said, I'm just 7 years old. You're over 7 kalpas old. How am I older than you? And at that time, then Markandeya Rishi smiled, and he spoke to the saints in that assembly. Markandeya tavihasan prahamadye tapasvinam ayusho gananam naivam brahmans tat chinu tatvita yavanto hikshana jata harismityaiva dehinam ekikrityaiva tan eva gananam karyam ayusha. He began to speak to them about ayush, or life. What is the lifespan of someone? My dear rishis, you please tell me, how do we calculate? Ayusho gananam. Gananam means to count. Ayusho gananam, how do we calculate who's senior? What is someone's life? And he says that all living entities, yavanto hikshana jata harismityaiva dehinam. Everybody's born with a body that grows old, but someone, the more they think about the Lord, that's how we should calculate their lifespan, according to how much they think about the Lord. Yavanto hikshana jata harismityaiva dehinam. How much time they spend thinking about the Lord, that's their actual span of life. So we don't calculate in any other way. And he went on to describe that samastasaya sammulam hitvarokrama sevanam vartamanam naram vaktum jivatiti nasaknuma. To have devotion at the lotus feet of the Lord, that's the only source of auspiciousness. And wise persons, Bhartamana Naram Vaktum Jivatiti Nasaknuma, they don't consider a person who's devoid of devotion as even living. someone who doesn't have devotion to the Lord Narayan, to Krishna, that person's not even living. And then he goes on to give examples. Darum kimna chalat yangam, kim nasvasiti bastrika, kim svid vina navarati, sanjivat vam natavata. He says, the limbs of a dead tree, they're moving in the wind, right? It's a dead tree, but they're moving. So is the dead tree alive? And he says, a blacksmith, he has a bellows. He pumps them to make the coals hot. They're breathing, right? And he says, a veena makes music. Is a veena alive? Is a blacksmith's bellows alive? By having these qualities, should we consider them to be living? Balo Bhagavata Shresto, Britta Chais, Chira Jivyapi, Netara Bhyetik Tulasim, Sumahan Api Vrikshaka. Now, if we consider who is senior, a child who has devotion to the Lord, or an old man who doesn't have devotion, which is greater, a small tulsi plant or a mighty tree? And then he told them, although this little boy is only 7 years old, he's still sitting on the lap of his father. He's 7 years old, and it's true, I'm 7 kalpas old. But in his 7 years of life, this little boy has spent more time thinking about the Lord than all of us put together. So that's why I'm offering obeisances to him. So this is Raghunandan Thakura. This is one of the takeaways in the life of Raghunandan Thakura, that Mukunda, although he's the uncle father of Raghunandan, he treated Raghunandan like his own father. And Mukunda himself, he never ran after pratishta or respect. Vaishnava doesn't think that he's a great personality. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, in one place, he said that it's necessary that the Vaishnavas accept the role of guru. Otherwise, we won't be able to increase our line. He said, but there's a problem. The problem is that as soon as someone thinks that they're a Vaishnava, they think that they're a guru, then they're no longer a Vaishnava. That's the problem. So Raghunandan grew up in such a family where Mukunda was such an example for him. Although a Premi Bhakta, he hid his ecstasy, and he considered Raghunandan to be like his own father. Lochandas Thakur in Chaitanya Mangal, he gives a verse where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke to Raghunandan, and he said, Jahare Chaitanya Baila Mora Prana Tumi Prakasha Korila Jari Abhiram Goswami Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Raghunandan, Mora Prana Tumi, you are my very life. That's a pretty amazing thing for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to say to someone. And he says that Prakasha Korila Jari Abhiram Goswami, that Abhiram Goswami revealed his greatness. How is that? According to the local tradition in Srikhanda, we visited several times Raghunandan Thakur's village of Srikhanda. His deity there is still there, Gopinath, and we'll tell, I think, hopefully some story about Gopinath. Abhiram Goswami once came there. He's a great devotee of Lord Nityananda. He's in Krishna Leela. He's the older brother of Srimati Radharani, Sridama. And Abhiram Thakur is a very eccentric kind of person, very powerful person. If he would offer obeisances to a rock, someone was worshiping a rock, and they said, this is a wonderful Shalagram Shila, but it's not a Shalagram Shila. Raghunandan Thakur, Abhiram Goswami, if he offered obeisances to that rock, the rock would break. And there's some stories, we don't want to get into that, it's a little violent, but when he would offer obeisances to someone who's supposedly a devotee, if they weren't really a devotee, anyway, it didn't have a very good ending. Maybe in the ultimate sense it did. But so on one occasion, Abhiram Thakur, he heard about Raghunandan Thakur. Abhiram Goswami heard about Raghunandan Thakur, and he went and offered his obeisances to him. And Raghunandan Thakur, when he saw him, he started jumping up and down. Wow, Abhiram Goswami is here. And then he offered obeisances back to Abhiram Goswami. And then Abhiram Goswami embraced him. And the two of them started jumping up and down and doing kirtan in the house of some devotee. And their dancing was so ecstatic that Raghunandan Thakura, he had a Newport, an ankle bracelet on. And because of the force of his dancing, it flew in the air 2 or 3 miles away and landed in a pond, the place known as Aikahata. It's still there today. That pond is known as Newport Kund, or the kund of the ankle bracelet. And they have that ankle bracelet still there today in the temple in the village of Badui. The local Mahants have that there. So Lord Chandas Thakur in Chaitanya Mangal, he speaks about the glorious qualities of Raghunandan Thakur. Krishnira bese nitya jagad mana mohe nahi bina bina sabbo samana sinehe. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. My little shloka book next to my chair outside. Can you bring it to me? Krishna abesi nitya. When Krishna would enter into Raghunandan Thakur, then Raghunandan Thakur would start dancing. He'd become a vase. He'd start dancing like in ecstasy. And Jagat Mana Mohe, his dancing enchanted the hearts of the whole world. And it said that Raghunandan Thakur, Nahi Bina Bina, but Sabha Samana Sinehi. He didn't make any distinctions between anyone. It's a very beautiful thing. Even sometimes amongst devotees, we make some distinction. This person's senior, this person's a Prabhupada disciple. We'll give more respect to him. This person's a temple president or this or that. We'll give more respect to him. But Raghunandan Thakur, he treated everyone in an equal way. He was such an exalted personality. And this is the nature of the Vaishnavas. Vrindavan Das Thakur in Chaitanya Bhagavat, he says, Esa Vaishnava Dharma. This is Vaishnava Dharma, that the Vaishnavas, they give respect to everyone. And he says that only somebody who's not a Vaishnava, or someone who's pretending like a Vaishnava, or someone who's advertising themselves as a Vaishnava, they don't have any taste for that. But the Vaishnavas, they give respect to everyone. Ese Vaishnava Dharma, Sabare Pranati, say Dharma Dvajijar, iti nahi rati. The Vaishnavas have a genuine taste like that. But the Dharma Dvajis, who are just wanting to get some respect from others, they don't have a taste like that. So this is the nature of Raghunandan Thakur. He's such a great personality that he naturally gave respect to everyone. He didn't consider who's great, who's whatever. Sarvada Madhur Yavani Bolaye Badani. And this was his nature, that Raghunandan Thakur, he would naturally give all respect to everyone. And whatever words that he spoke, Sarvada Madhuravani. All the words that he spoke were just like honey. They were very, very sweet. Sarva Kalana Sunile Kata Katani. And that Raghunandan Thakur, he didn't want to hear anything harsh about anyone else. That's the nature of the Vaishnavas. They're very, very kind and soft-hearted. They give all respect to everyone else. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami speaks about the quality known as Priyamvada, or sweet speech, which is a quality that Raghunandan Thakur had. And Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami defines it, Jani Krita Paradhe Pi Sanfavari Priyamvada, that you speak sweet words even to someone who's offended you. It's not quite like Facebook discussions. So Raghunandan Thakur, he always spoke in a sweet way. Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in another place, he quotes a verse from the Mahabharata. Piteva putram karuno nodvajit yayati yajam visudasya rishikeshas turnam tasya prasidati. Someone who doesn't agitate other living entities and acts like a kind-hearted father to them, the Supreme Lord quickly becomes satisfied with such a pure-hearted person. So this is Raghunandan Thakur. He was so very, very gentle. Sarvada Madhuravani. Everything he spoke was just so nectarian and sweet. And Sarva Kalana Sunili Kata Katani. He wouldn't listen to harsh language. He just couldn't tolerate it. He would just check out. He didn't want to hear that. Raghunandan Thakura, Lochandas Thakura says he has these qualities. Chaturi, Madhuri, Lila Bilasa, Labanya. He was very intelligent, Chaturi. He was very Madhuri, very, very sweet. He was very expert. He was very playful. He was very charming. He was handsome. Rashamoya Deha Ta Eshang Sharidhanya. His body was Rashamoya Deha. It was just like a flood of rasa, a flood of nectar. And Raghunandan Thakura, he says, Eshang Sharidhanya. He's the most fortunate person in the whole world. In his Sutra Kanda, text 648, Lochandas Thakura, who's one of the early biographers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he speaks about, he alludes to an amazing pastime that happened with Raghunandan Thakura. Shri Murti ke ladu kayoraila je jana tare alpa buri kore komudha jana Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Shimurti ki ladu, kayoila je jana. He would give ladus to the murti, to the deity he had of Gopinath, and Gopinath would personally eat them. Tare alpa buddhi kore kom mudha jana. What person who's a mudha, what fool would try to say that Raghunandan Thakur's alpa buddhi, he's an ordinary, unintelligent person. So this is described in a wonderful song by the poet Uddhava Das in a very old book, a book that we have in our collection here with Gora. I can show you the title page of it. This is Sri Padakalpataru. It's a 2-volume songbook. This is not the oldest books we have in our collection, but they're pretty old. These are over 150 years old, almost 200 years old now. They were compiled by a devotee named Vaisnava Das. And he includes a famous song by the poet Uddhava Das, who is a great Vaishnava in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's line. The song begins with Prakata Shrikanda Basa, about giving us some clue why it is that Raghunandan's father, Mukunda, describes Raghunandan as being his father and himself as Raghunandan's son. So he describes in this song that Gopinath was served with great affection in the house of Mukunda Das and Sri Kunda. And one day Mukunda had to go to do some work, so he called for Raghunandan, little boy, and Raghunandan at this time, maybe he was 4 years old or 5 years old, something, very small boy. And he called for Raghunandan. He said that this deity of Gopinath, he's been in our family for many generations. He's been worshipped by my father, my grandfather, our great-grandfather, in so many generations. So just like your mother feeds you and I every day, so also Gopinath has to be fed every day. So he tells Raghunandan like this. He said, you take care of him. This is a very important responsibility. Can you do this thing? And Raghunandan said, yes, father, I'll do that. So Raghunandan, then he collected all the items to offer Gopinath. And he came in, he was maybe 5 years old. And he imitated what he saw his father do. He rang the bell and bowed down. He didn't know any mantras. He just chanted Hare Krishna. He said, my dear Gopinath, my dear Lord, my father told me to offer this bhoga. And I know I'm just a little boy, and I don't know any mantras or anything like that, but my father told me, so please accept this. And so then he went out. And he came back a few minutes later, and he saw the food was still there on the plate. So he didn't understand that Krishna eats just by seeing something. And the little boy thought, oh no, Gopinath hasn't eaten. And so Raghunandan, 5-year-old boy, 4-year-old boy, like that, started crying, please eat, please eat. And the Hari Bhakti Sudodoya, Krishna gives a verse which our Guru Maharaj is very fond of quoting. He says, Sada muktopi badhosmi bhaktena sneharajabi ajitopi jito aham tairavasopi vasikrita. He said, I'm Sada muktopi, I'm always liberated and free. But badhosmi, I become bound up, bhaktena sneharajabi, by the rope of love of my devotee. So Gopinath, who's Sarveshvareshvara, He's the controller of all the controllers. He's Srishtikarta, the creator of everything. He's Jagannath, the Lord of the universe. He became conquered by this little 4 or 5-year-old boy, Raghunandan. And so then Gopinath ate everything. He ate that entire sweet. And so around that time, Mukunda came back and he asked Raghunandan, so did you offer the boga to Gopinath? And Raghunandan said, yes. And then Mukunda said, please bring me some of the prasadam. And Raghunandan, the little boy, became confused. He said, prasadam? I did what you told me, and Gopinath ate all of it. So there's nothing to bring you. So Mukunda became very confused. And he thought, what is this? He thought, anyway, this boy, he's always been a good boy. He's not naughty. He's always accustomed to speaking the truth. And I doubt if he could eat everything by himself, and he was a huge laddu. So what happened? So he was thinking about this for a few days, and his curiosity became stronger and stronger. And finally, Mukunda called Raghunandan again. He said, hey, Raghu, I want you to offer boga again to Gopinath. I have to go do something. And so he left the house, and then Mukunda came back around another way and hid himself on the altar. And Raghunandan, little boy, was very happy to serve Gopinath again. He brought everything in the deity room. And again, he bowed down. He said, my Gopinath, I know I'm just a little boy, but my father told me to offer this, and you please accept it. So Gopinath was famous as Bhaktavatsal. He's very affectionate to his devotees. He was defeated by the sincere love of this little boy. And he started eating that laddu. And he ate about half of that. And then Gopinath saw Mukunda peeking out from his hiding spot. So then Gopinath didn't try to hide the fact that he'd eaten what he had, but he didn't take any more either. And when Mukunda saw that, he became ecstatic. And he took that little boy in his lap. And then Mukunda began singing the glories of Raghunandan in a voice trembling with ecstasy. And we'll conclude our discussion today with the last stanza of the line by the poet Uddhavadas. Adyapi shikanda pure arda ladu ache kore deke jata bhagyavanta jane. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Habina Madana Jai Shri Raghunandana Se Eudavadasa Rasabhane. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Seems that Prabhu's gotten froze. Let me see if I remove him and add him again. Maybe he will come back. Thankfully, we're just at the end of the katha, so. Seems like maybe we have lost Madhavananda Prabhu. But I appreciate all the devotees' kind attention for hearing about the glories of Sri Raghunandana Thakura. It was very sweet pastimes Prabhu is sharing, and also the qualities of Raghunandan, which endeared him to all the devotees. I'd never heard those descriptions before. That was very special. Okay, yeah, it seems like Prabhu may be having internet trouble, but thankfully Krishna allowed most of what he wanted to share with us to get through today. So thank you everyone for joining us here on the SPT page yet again. And we look forward to having you back again soon, where wonderful speakers like Madhavananda Prabhu will be sharing Krishna Katha with us. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.